Kia ora, I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. China is acting in an increasingly aggressive manner towards Taiwan. New Zealand has a good relationship with both China and Taiwan. Will it all end in tears? Welcome, Robert.
Morning, Bruce.
How real is China's threat to take back Taiwan?
I think it's a very real threat because China, since it emerged after the Chinese Civil War back in the late 40s and Communist China won the Civil War, most of the nationalists fled to Taiwan. And so Taiwan is seen as a breakaway province of China, and the Chinese authorities run what they call the One China policy. And they believe at some point that they believe, first of all, they have the right to speak for Taiwan internationally, and secondly, they believe that at some point Taiwan will be reintegrated into the Chinese mainland.
How is New Zealand going to navigate this? If it has a good relationship with both, what's it going to do?
Well, it's not just New Zealand. A number of countries are in a tricky position. New Zealand has actually, although it does not have diplomatic relations with Taiwan, but it has an extremely close relationship. And what I mean by that is Taiwan is the sixth biggest export market for New Zealand, and there's a lot of trade that comes from Taiwan to New Zealand. Also, there's quite a big Taiwanese community in Auckland, which have migrated from Taiwan since the 1990s. And the trajectory in trade patterns has been upwards. So yes, I mean, the relationship with Taiwan is good. I think New Zealand is trying to pursue a nuanced policy. And at times it does irritate the Chinese how warm the relationship is between New Zealand and Taiwan. For example, in May last year, when New Zealand backed Taiwan's admission as an observer, WHO conference, China publicly expressed its opposition. But from New Zealand's point of view, it didn't back down, and it believes that it can, I think, get the message across to the Chinese authorities that they shouldn't go too far in their belligerence. And Taiwan, although it hasn't got diplomatic relations with New Zealand, it's got a thriving economy, and it's got a population of 24 million people. So I suppose really the dilemma that faces New Zealand is how to remain engaged with Taiwan without being too provocative to China. But New Zealand does find itself in a genuine dilemma here. It can't really just back down in the face of Chinese economic pressure. It can't accept a master-servant relationship with China. And after all, Taiwan is a democracy. It has Ing-wen, who was elected president in 2016, which, according to all international observers, was a democratic election, a pluralist election, which was fiercely contested. And by the way, China backed the opposition to Ing-wen. And this is the first woman who has been president of Taiwan. So I think there are some important political reasons that New Zealand has to walk a tightrope, really. It can't be too provocative to China, but at the same time, it can't sell out on the values that it stands for, namely on human rights, but also pluralist democracy. So I think there's reasons why New Zealand and many other liberal democracies will not fold in the face of China's pressure.
So what will happen? It looks like a clash. Will there be a war in the Pacific?
It's possible. I think before Xi Jinping came to power, 2035 was seen as the crunch time. But since Xi Jinping has been in power, I think strategic planners in Washington have moved the timetable forward. And in fact, Xi Jinping himself has moved forward the timetable for modernizing Chinese military forces on a global basis. And what we've seen in just the last week, for example, a record number of incursions into Taiwan's airspace by around about 25 Chinese military aircraft, which is a source of concern. But China, in a sense, although it believes in the One China policy, I'm not sure how far it wants to pursue that. China is aware that it is critically dependent on external markets. And let's just think about this. If China launched an invasion of Taiwan, it could well bring the United States in, because under the arrangements it's had over with Taiwanese leaderships historically, the United States will be obliged to defend Taiwan. And it's not just the point that it will be a military clash between the world's two most sophisticated armies and militaries, but it's also the fact that it would be a public relations disaster for China. And it's critically dependent on not on the US market for its exports, but also for Europe, which is a community of liberal democracies. And so China, by invading Taiwan, could risk cutting off access to the US market, the European Union market, which is huge, and Japan. So, you know, a lot of people are presenting this as, an invasion and an easy job. I don't think it is. It's not easy diplomatically, and strategically it could be difficult because Taiwan has a sophisticated and well-equipped military capability. Now, no one's suggesting they could stand up to a superpower with a more than 1 billion population. So I think if they did invade Taiwan, I think we'd all know the outcome. But I think the cost for China could be substantial.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Ka kite anō.